In Ghana, when you ask your neighbor how he's doing, he'll tell you that, oh, I'm managing. Everybody's a manager in Ghana. The guy that you think that he's doing very well, ideally should not be telling you he's managing, he's telling you he's managing, right? In a sense, that's how Ghanaians have managed multi-party democracy since 1992 to date. They've managed it to the extent that now some writers think it's a model for the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. So elections in Ghana are highly competitive, and always the stakes are very high. Almost all the time, not the 2016 one, but previous ones were equally very high. But the 2016 election were unique in the sense that, for me, I said the election started on August 28th, 2013. It was on that day that the 9 justices of the Supreme Court delivered their verdict. 2012 elections, for the first time in the history of Ghana's multi-party contest, were disputed by the opposition. And they disputed it not by asking their supporters to come out on the street and fight, but they gathered evidence and they proceeded to the Supreme Court to challenge the validity of the elections that the Electoral Commission had declared for the National Democratic candidate, then incumbent President John Dramani Mahama. And for 88 good months, Ghanaians were hooked onto televisions daily, watching litigation in court. And at the end of it all, we were all convinced that there's something wrong with the electoral system. For instance, at a polling booth, after elections, people have voted, the results are being collated, they've collated them, they declared them from the polling booth. Candidate A, total votes at the polling booth is 271. That results at the coalition center will turn to 271. Okay. Then another candidate from the polling booth, 200 and let's say 95. At the coalition center, it will be 259. So indirectly, the two major political parties in Ghana, the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party, their agents at the polling booths and at the coalition center have a mechanism that they have in place that votes are either increased or decreased for either candidate A or candidate B. It has always been the case until December 2012. That in the electoral district in the Greater Accra region called Kwame, the MPP candidate who had won huge margin, but at the coalition center she realized that her votes had reduced. She believed the alarm that something was wrong. But people who have observed elections and those who have studied Ghanaian elections have always known that, of course, these irregularities are something that has always been there. So when the opposition proceeded to the court, I think that was a very good thing they did. At the end of the day, the judges, 9 Supreme Court judges, compiled their report, 595-page report, exposed what some scholars have called the convenient myth. In the context of Ghana, the myth was there, but Ghana was still seen as a model for the rest of Africa. And what came out in court convinced Ghanaians that there was something wrong. One, that Ghanaians were not well informed about the electoral system itself. Occasionally, they would join queues and vote, but they vote and go home. Okay. 2, that political parties, if you wanted to win elections, you need to be very vigilant. And that vigilance will be at the polling booth, not at the coalition center or the EC's national headquarters, no. Then the political parties themselves learned that for you to succeed, you need to be well organized. You should have a campaign machinery that is very efficient from the grassroots, not at the national campaign headquarters. So this was what came out. It's an election that, for the first time, an incumbent lost, which is unique in Ghana's fourth Republican dispensation. At least, all the other, they've had 2 terms. And that was a campaign message that John Dramani Mahama tried to use, that others have had 2 terms. Why not me? Then the opposition will counter that by telling him that no, it's political parties, not individuals. Every political party had 8 terms. Okay, 8 years. That's 2 terms. All right. Your party had this the 8th year, so you could not. And at the end of it, he lost. He lost not because of the term issue. He also contributed, but largely it was to do with the economy. It was to do with the economy. Several challenges. Some were not the making of the government, were external. They could not. We had power challenges for 2 years. Ghanaians were sleeping in darkness. They call it Dumso, local word. It means off and on. The technocrats call it load shedding. I don't know what that means. Right? Okay. It all contributed. So if you had a factory that employed close to 200 people, and they were now forced to now run it on diesel plants, they had to lay off workers. So many people, right? Don't do it. Then they could not recruit many people. Okay. On top of that, services being very poor, there were increases in tariffs. So they increased electricity tariffs. Then the government introduced prepaid meters. And Ghanaians being who we are, they nicknamed them Usain Bolt prepaid meters. Because you buy credit, put it, you turn on the light, in no time it's gone. Okay. So what kind of meters are these? All right. Yeah. Then inflation also contributed. So largely, it was the economy. On top of it, Ghana has a very youthful population. And many of these guys that were training for the universities, they come out from the universities, they sit at home for 2 years, 3 years without a job. Okay. And for people that are interviewed, they tell me that I'm looking at my future. I'm going to vote for a party that can guarantee me that when I vote next year, I'll get a job. And that if I see that it's not going to be very bright, I wouldn't waste my time voting. Okay. So it was these independent voters, so-called floating voters, who came and decided the election in the favor of the opposition. Okay. So basically, in the Ghanaian case, this is how we look at it. Ghana has now succeeded in consolidating an electoral democracy. There are several challenges. It's not perfect. You have a legislature that is very weak. You have judiciary that have challenges. And the economy is not producing the dividends that democracy is supposed to provide. So all these challenges are there. But compared to others, you see that yes, I think the Ghanaians have gotten their act together and it's working for them. Ghana's politics, as I started, you see that it has grown to extent that in the last election it was about ideas. Party A presents its ideas that this is how we are going to do. For instance, the opposition promised that if voted into power, they will transform the Ghanaian economy radically. Ghana's economy hasn't transformed that much from what economists call the gorgeous bed economy to date. It hasn't transformed. There's little manufacturing and all that. Now the opposition is promising that they are going to radically transform that. Okay, how are they going to do it? Through industrialization. That they are going to set up factories in all the districts. So we have 271 districts. Every district will have a factory. Okay. Right. That the incumbent disputed that is not going to be viable in some districts, and that's a fact. Especially in some regions up north, the Savannah Belt, there's virtually nothing that they are going to produce. All right. So if you set up a factory, where are you going to be producing? Okay. But the point here is that what they were emphasizing, and how I read it, is that it was to move the economy and put it on a sound footing to industrialize by bringing about starting up factories. And Nkrumah did that. And for them, if they are to do the same, it's likely will be on reviving some of those Nkrumah's factories that were set up and trying to do that. Then the other thing that came up was to do with social welfare of the citizens and what Ghanaians want most. And for me, I think it was a key thing. The incumbent invested a lot in infrastructure, build new roads, build schools, clinics, They even claimed they brought Dubai to Ghana by putting up a huge interchange at the Kwame Nkrumah circle. They did so much. It meant that with all this infrastructure, people were still not satisfied. Why? Because to do with the social welfare of people. That I can't go to hospital and I'm forced to pay for a health insurance that they could not afford. On top of that, they are lacking jobs. Okay. So that was a message that Ghanaians sent to the politicians that, of course, we need infrastructure, we need a good roads. But on top of that, we also want to be able to feed ourselves. We also want to be able to take our kids to good schools and be able to pay for them. That was very relevant. Then the other bit to do with issues is sometimes the politics that is to do with the belly, quoting some scholars, that is overpromise. And that is where the foot soldiers come in. Because for the foot soldier, when they dedicate themselves to political action, they want their rewards instantly. And in the context of Ghana, anytime there's transition from party A to party B, the foot soldiers see political transition as a coup d'etat. They see the losing party as the one that has been removed. You are out. So they go seizing public property. If you read Ghanaian newspapers, you've come across them that the incumbent party foot soldiers have seized road tolls, booths. They've seized public toilets. All right. For them, these are the things that they foot soldiers, because they feel that well, it might not sound well to you, but somebody manning the road toll booths is collecting the money, and they're pocketing the money is not going to central government. So for the foot soldiers, anytime there's change of government, this transition, they see it in that context. And that's a challenge. Even though 2012, there was a new transitional act that was introduced to make this process very smooth. And to the credit of the former regime, they did that very well. It's at the level of the grassroots where you find party foot soldiers, their perception of what is mine and what is victory. Their interpretation of political power is that that party that was in power is no more. And anything that is for the state is for my party. And that is a challenge. Going forward, I think this is an area that policymakers and politicians will have to address.